Welcome. Thanks, MLA team. You're setting a great example. Please do let us know where you're dialing in from. We love to see that we've got people from all across the country when we run our webinars. So if you've joined us before in our cattle and timber or our time-controlled grazing webinar, welcome back. And if this is your first time with us, welcome to the sustainability series on modelling soil carbon with Agrimix. This is a new initiative of Meat and Livestock Australia where we showcase topics and research from our on-farm sustainability program. So who is MLA? I'll just touch on that briefly. MLA is a service provider to the Australian red meat industry. We support this sector through 4 key work areas in research, technology development, adoption and marketing. And that's all with the goal of supporting producer profitability, sustainability and global competitiveness. But tonight we're going to be talking all about the research, and I'm really pleased to introduce Zach and Chloe from Agrimix. MLA has co-invested on a long-term study with soil carbon monitoring and modelling, which we'll hear all about tonight. Some housekeeping too. At the end of the presentation, we will have the opportunity for Q&A, and we'll have the opportunity to have some of that out loud as well. So whilst you're on mute at the moment, you will be able to come off and ask your question directly to our speakers. So please, without further ado, I'd like to hand the virtual stage over to Chloe to take us through.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. We're very pleased that MLA have invited us to talk with you about how Agrimix is combining science, technology and nature-based solutions to unlock the potential of soil carbon and what this means for productivity, profitability and sustainability for Australian beef producers. So since 2008, Agrimix has been on a mission to help producers grow more beef with what they've got, translating research into practical solutions on the ground. We've partnered with leading research organisations like CSIRO, MLA and several major universities to deliver proven innovations that help producers grow better pastures, store more carbon and reduce emissions. We're a family-owned business founded by Nick Kempe, who's here tonight, and our focus has always been on commercialising leading-edge research to support Northern Australian beef producers. Over the years, we've built a strong track record of turning research into results, whether that's through our high-quality pasture seed or our science-based management guidance. Our core philosophy is simple: work on farm with producers to drive productivity gains and increase profitability in a sustainable way. Of course, this work is happening in the context of some significant challenges. Across Northern Australia, many grazing lands are suffering from degraded soils, pasture dieback, low productivity or poor resilience. There's also a lot of underutilised carbon value locked up in these systems, value that could be realised through better management and measurement. At the same time, producers are facing rising sustainability demands from both markets and regulators, which means that proving your environmental credentials is becoming just as important as improving production. So that's where our solutions come in. First, the Progatis legume, a drought-tolerant, high-protein, deep tap-rooted tropical legume that not only improves pasture quality and increases live weight gains, but also reduces methane emissions from cattle. And second, our flagship innovation, Agrimix Flux, a near real-time soil carbon quantification and pasture monitoring system that is low cost, reliable and sensitive to small changes. Agrimix Flux has grown out of Nick's continuing quest to better understand and measure the benefits of planting Progatis. And together, these technologies are giving producers the tools to grow better pastures, build soil carbon and deliver lasting returns, both environmentally and financially. I'm going to hand over to Zach now, and he'll kick off with a case study demonstrating how these technologies can be utilised on farm. He'll then take a deep dive on the 4-year research program co-funded by Agrimix, MLA, beef producers and the National Soil Carbon Innovation Challenge, in which we commissioned QUT, led by Professors David Rawlings and Peter Grace, to develop the Agrimix Flux system. Just before I go, a big shout out to everyone involved in the project. There's too many to list out individually here tonight, but from the research team at QT to MLA and the beef producers that made this happen, a heartfelt thanks from Agrimix for all your hard work. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, thanks, Chloe. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to walk you through the technical aspects and the real-world application of Agrimix Flux tonight. So let's first kick off with this example of how improving pastures can dramatically boost beef production while at the same time transforming the paddock from a carbon emitter into a carbon sink. So here at Ralston, we've got two paddocks where we've compared buffel grass and improved pasture. And in the first year, you can see here that we have a 54 kilo per hectare live weight gain in our buffel only, compared to 157 kilos per hectare in our improved pasture in year one. So that's a massive productivity boost over a 5-year. And over a 5-year rolling average, we can see that that improved productivity still stands at 133 kilos per hectare. So it's just not a one-off hit. From that, this increase has allowed Ian to double his stocking rate with the improved pasture, 2.5 times increase his live weight gain yield per hectare, adding about $235 extra revenue. We also saw 5 times more soil organic carbon sequestered, so that's 520 kilos versus 108 in the buffel only. And critically, the net footprint was flipped from a plus 3.9 kilos of CO2 equivalent per kilo of beef to a minus 4.6 kilos of CO2 equivalent per kilo of beef. So that's turning the system from an emitter into a genuine carbon sink. So the key takeaway here is that improved pastures boost productivity and profitability while also sequestering carbon at scale. Productivity and carbon wins at the same time. So that's the impact that we're seeing at Ralston, real gains in productivity, profitability and carbon. And this isn't just a theory or a one-off case study. On the next slide, you'll see how we've already got 7 registered CER projects across Northern Australia, proving that Agrimix Flux is happening in real life right now. So as I said, we're just not stopping at Ralston. We've got 7 CER registered projects across Northern Australia. Those 7 projects range from the Gulf all the way down to the western slopes of New South Wales, encompassing different management practices, soil and climate zones. So these sites show Agrimix Flux is no longer a theory, it's a real program being delivered on the ground. Our Measure Model Verify toolkit is the engine room of Agrimix Flux. It begins measuring carbon flows using flux towers for the calibration. We then model that SOC, accounting for local information such as soil type, rainfall and management data, and then we verify it again with flux towers, producing a credible low-cost carbon number that gives producers and regulators confidence. So this slide here shows how the Agrimix Flux approach works. So we start off here with Descent Cabby, which is a process model, and we'll touch more on that a bit later. This process model simulates biological, chemical and physical processes that drive soil carbon dynamics. This model is locally calibrated for Australian conditions using soil cores, biomass samples and flux data. So it reflects what's happening under Australian conditions. Then we have our flux towers. These supercharge the calibration by providing high-frequency real-time data across a large area, instead of just a few data points from soil cores every few years. The towers track carbon movement in and out of the ecosystem continuously over that 20 to 50 hectares. By combining the flux tower measurements with the process model, we can calibrate and then simulate and split carbon flows into soil and plant pools and see whether a system is storing or releasing carbon at any point in time. This gives us a bigger picture landscape scale of understanding the carbon dynamics with that model overlaid. So together this model plus measurement approach forms Agrimix Flux, a continuous landscape model turning local data into high frequency flux measurements and into credible soil carbon numbers. So that's Agrimix Flux in a nutshell. Let's look at some long-term paired paddock data from QUT to understand what the potential of some common practice changes are. So this table summarises the average sequestration rates coming from paired paddock trials conducted by QUT across multiple northern Australian sites. First of all, the improved pasture was a 12-year study was incorporated from Desmanthus paddocks over 12 years, and the driver of that one was where nitrogen is increasing the system through growth and driving both pasture productivity and soil carbon. The QUT trials show the average sequestration rate of 0.4 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year, while the second trial that they looked at was grazing management by altering stocking rate and duration or intensity, essentially implementing a time-controlled grazing scenario. The QUT trials measured an even greater benefit, showing an average sequestration rate of 0.6 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year based on that work done by QUT. So these paired paddock results highlight the SOC potential for these different practice changes, and there's also the potential for a stacked benefit by combining the two together. So if we were to sum up the key benefits of the Agrimix Flux approach, this list here does it quite nicely. Near real-time and cost-effective carbon monitoring, allowing producers to make changes to management activities to preserve carbon and ground cover. Separates climate and management-derived soil organic carbon, which gives integrity for credits and can also enhance precision and reduce spatial variability compared to sparse soil cores. Actionable insights for management support decisions, making it, as I said before, as I mentioned, near real-time quantification and understanding the key drivers of soil organic carbon change. Supports carbon accounting for low carbon claims, as this technology can be accessible 24/7 compared to having an answer every 5 years. And we've also got some peer-reviewed papers published through QUT, and we've got more on the way. So therefore, with Agrimix Flux, producers can see change early, act faster, and verify outcomes with confidence. So just touching on that, it's quite handy to understand the type of model we use, and we use a process model, and from that, all models are not created equally, and we've deliberately chosen a process model rather than a pure statistical model because it does more than just fit patterns. It actually simulates the real biological, chemical, and physical process driving soil carbon increases. Our model captures plant growth, microbial activity, and carbon and nitrogen cycling, building a dynamic picture of how carbon moves through the system. It also captures cause and effect of relationships. For example, it can quantify how drought impacts carbon sequestration and pasture growth, and this allows us to test different management scenarios without the risk of long wait, without the long wait for field data. The same core model works across different strata. We simply just adjust the input parameters like soil, rainfall, and management practices while keeping the science that those biogeochemical processes the same. And importantly, the model can incorporate forecast data, letting us run what-if analysis if simulations under different climate or management conditions to see how soil carbon and dry matter responds. So by using a process model rather than a statistical one, we're able to give producers and investors a credible and science-backed tool to understand how management changes influence carbon over time to make better decisions with confidence. We've just seen how a process model simulates the biology and chemistry and physics driving soil carbon, but for the model to be powerful, it needs high quality, high frequency data to calibrate it. That's where Flux Towers come in. So why are we using Flux Towers? Flux Towers provide granular information that allows us to supercharge calibrations in the absence of long-term data sets. So looking at this chart here at Essex, we see we've had obviously a tower in place, And we see that blade ploughing here has stimulated the temporary release of carbon into the atmosphere. And from there, we also received then 180 mils of rainfall in November, December, which triggered strong plant growth and carbon drawdown. So that's this large drop of carbon coming out of the atmosphere into plants and soil. From here, we start to see soil moisture gets depleted and we have this plateauing effect. So not really losing any carbon, not really gaining any carbon. Later on, outside of the growing season, we see 100 mil of rainfall in June and July over 2 days, and that has stimulated a soil organic carbon release from microbes. They breathe like you and I and release carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. That's why we see this temporary loss of carbon. And it takes a little while for plants to catch up, and just note that this is out of the growing season. So it takes a little while, and then we start to see this large drawdown again as we start to get warmer growing conditions and rainfall. And then in that year at Essex, we also see lack of rain over that October period where we start to plateau again. So by linking these events with carbon dioxide flows, Flux towers let us pinpoint and calibrate how management activities influence soil carbon. Now, just to mention, this graph here is not soil organic carbon, it's net ecosystem exchange. So that's the Flux towers measuring carbon in the atmosphere, either going into plants or coming out of the soil and getting the net footprint. So essentially, Flux towers turn the invisible into visible, showing in real time how soil carbon is changing and giving us the data needed to calibrate and improve our models for faster than traditional approaches. So what does the ecosystem, when we put Flux towers and process modelling together, looks like for us? So here it is. This is the recipe for Agrimix Flux right here. You've heard that we use a process model that we've calibrated locally and why it's superior, and Flux towers to enable us to supercharge the calibrations more quickly. But we also bring in data from silo for rainfall and temperature, and our local data points, such as soil type, if in lieu of soil cores. And then in our 7 demonstration sites, we also have OptiWays and PhenoCams to ensure what the model is simulating makes sense. And then for our internal checks and balances, we use some remote sensing through turn just to ensure, and compare models with a turn model just to ensure that the model outputs are not running away. And from that, you get Agrimix Flux as the outputs. So one of the great things that Agrimix Flux lets us do is we can separate management-driven soil carbon change from climate-driven change. So as soil carbon accounting tightens, being able to prove management effects separate from climate is critical for demonstrating genuine sequestration. It's the ability to show that additionality that will underpin credible accuracy and future insetting claims. So here we're looking at soil organic carbon in a central Queensland system. The green line here is our legume plus buffel, and then our lime green line here is our buffel only baseline. So over the 6 years, the improved pasture stored an extra 2.5 tonnes, so this difference here, the delta here, of carbon per hectare compared to that baseline. So the clear evidence of additionality. This kind of data builds market confidence because we can attribute gains to actual management practices rather than seasonal or climatic variation. So separating climate from management effects is becoming increasingly important for carbon reporting and demonstrating additionality, and the Agrimix Flux puts producers ahead of the curve when they're using it. We've talked a lot about how Agrimix Flux works and how well it's calibrated, but just don't take my word for it. Here's some hard data that QUT have put together on our 7 sites. And this slide shows observed here versus simulated soil carbon from 7 of our project sites. Each dot represents soil coring and their range, and compared to the paddocks, this line here, compared to the paddock simulation. As you can see, the results line up very closely, and the model and measurements almost sit on top of each other, showing that Agrimix Flux is well calibrated and reliable on real farms. We've talked a lot about soil carbon at the moment, so what I want to do is just touch on what else you can get from our Agrimix Flux platform. And it provides some really good code benefits it delivers for day-to-day management, particularly grazing optimization and profitability. So on the left, you can see our data streams, so pasture growth, total standing dry matter, grazing impacts, root growth, carbon pools, and carbon movements. And it's actionable because producers can then use this data on the left to start to continuously forecast feed on offer, to understand the property's feed base when in near real time, understand pasture growth rates and optimal grazing plans. So knowing exactly when to rotate, when to rest, and how many head you can sustain. Running simulations on different rainfall, temperature, and grazing scenarios to plan for droughts or good seasons ahead. Optimizing trade-offs between beef production and soil carbon, so finding that sweet spot where profitability and sustainability meet. And helping guide supplementary feeding decisions during tough conditions such as droughts, and building near real-time protocols for insets and supply chain recording. And we're also working up an MLA project currently investigating a protocol for insets. So while Agrimix Flux is a soil carbon powerhouse, it's also a management tool that drives productivity, profitability, and resilience, delivering benefits today as well as positioning you for future carbon opportunities. So I just want to touch on, before we do a deep dive into our Essex case study, some frequently asked questions that we get around the traps with Agrimix Flux. So one of the main ones we get is, do you need to buy a flux tower to do a carbon project? The short and curlies are no. Agrimix operate and maintain the flux towers ourselves. However, once we've got a calibrated model for that area, flux towers aren't needed or required on farm 24/7. We only simply put one there when we need to verify or we need to calibrate that specific practice change. Second, so how does it actually help manage the land? Because we separate climate from management impacts, producers can better understand the drivers of change and improve their soil organic carbon management. It also enables scenario testing for better decision making and project feasibility, and it simulates dry matter production to guide ground cover management. And finally, is Agrimix available to use now? It sure is. For ACUs, Agrimix Flux can be used under Schedule 2. That's what those 7 current registered projects are under. In the 2021 soil carbon method. Flux towers themselves yet, however, are not approved for verification. So at that 5-year mark, we would still need to go in with soil coring. However, we expect by the end of the year that flux towers will be approved and we'll be able to go with those. Right, so let's jump into the case study that's located in the heart of the Brigalow Belt. So that is Essex. So Essex is a grazing property owned by the Quinn family, who've been on this land for over 40 years and are award-winning grass-fed beef producers. They're focused on boosting beef production and soil carbon for both financial and ecological sustainability. We're running an Agrimix Flux demonstration project on 566 hectares there, and this consists of brown and grey clays that are medium to high clay content. The land history there is similar to much of central Queensland. Forest cleared and burnt in 1980, buffel grass seeded afterwards, and then blade ploughed again in 1995 and 2010 to manage brigalow regrowth. And the current management change is it was blade ploughed in 2023 with legumes such as Progatis desmanthus and butterfly pea sown directly at the back of the blade plough for the soil carbon project. Oops. Here we go. So as part of our work at Project Essex, we're using scenario analysis to model outcomes over a 25-year project timeframe. So we initially do this first to understand what's going on. So as you can see here, we are comparing the current, well, what was then the current buffel scenario or business as usual, this lime green line, and the additionality of legumes such as desmanthus or Progatis desmanthus and butterfly pea. So by running this model over the full project period, we can see, which is 25 years, we can see how soil carbon accumulates under each scenario. In the legume plus buffel system, soil carbon gain is projected at 14 tonnes per hectare compared to just 4.4 tonnes per hectare for the buffel only. So that's an extra 9.6 tonnes per hectare directly attributable to practice change. This kind of analysis is powerful for producers because it also shows how adding legumes not only boosts productivity and nitrogen in the system, but also locks more carbon deeper into the soil with those deep-rooted legumes. So in short, scenarios can help producers such as the Quinn family understand the feasibility of entering into a soil carbon project. And now that the project's been running since 2023, let's have a quick look at the results so far of what we've seen. All right, so yep, as I said, it was blade ploughed in October 2023, and this chart shows our modelled soil organic carbon from then to now in September 2025. And here we can see that we started off with 40.36 tonnes of carbon in the soil, and that we've actually increased it to 41.49 tonnes per hectare over the period. So that's an increase of about 1.13 tonnes per hectare, which averages out at around that 0.56 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year. So if you cast your mind back to that paired paddock trial that QUT did, they sat around 0.4 on average, so it falls within the range there. Still early days though, but this trend already shows that the system's responding to the practice change and is beginning to build soil carbon. We'll keep tracking these numbers as the project progresses. So as I mentioned before, we don't just do soil carbon in Agrimix Flux. We also simulate dry matter and dry matter analysis. So as you can see here, we've simulated our dry matter production over the next 25 years. And on this chart, you can see the above ground biomass, which in the lime green is buffel only. And then the buffel plus Progatis desmanthus and butterfly pea is our dark green line. So the model projects that on average, there's 5.5 tonnes per hectare in the dry matter for the legume plus buffel system compared to the 4.6 tonnes per hectare for the buffel only. So when we do the math on that, that's a 20% increase. So this additional biomass is great because it's significant. It leads to increased carrying capacity, better ground cover, and greater resilience to drought and erosion. So that's more feed on offer and also gives producers more flexibility in their grazing management, which ultimately drives profitability alongside soil carbon gains. So this scenario analysis shows how integrating legumes doesn't just boost soil carbon, it also supports better production, outcomes, and landscape health at the same time. So let's have a quick, let's touch quickly on what our dry matter production is currently over the system since the start in October 2023. So you can see that the seasonal peaks and troughs here, we reached a peak of 2.92 tonnes per hectare in March, and then a low of 0.82 tonnes per hectare in July 2024. So over the 2 years, the average ground cover has been approximately that 1.6 tonnes per hectare. These results are already helping the Quinn family make informed decisions about grazing pressure, stocking rates and feed budgeting, and using real-time data to keep ground cover up to improve carrying capacity. We've also been lucky enough to get Peter and Matt Quinn on film discussing all things Agrimix Flux, so I'll play a little film for everyone to watch for the next couple of minutes.
So far, Lockie, this flux tower here has really substantiated what we thought was going on to a point. And I mean, this sort of new technology, I mean, it can be used, some of the stuff this is going to be used for in the future, we probably don't even really know about yet. So, I mean, that's the exciting part of being in the rural industry, in the red meat industry, in my opinion, about going forward using this sort of data or the data from this sort of technology, and then the other gates that this sort of technology opens up. What do you reckon, Matt?
Yeah, with the real-time measurements, we certainly use it to quantify and verify the impact we're having on our pastures and our environment. And being real-time, and the model that you put over the top of it, you can look forward and see the impact and what we're going to have and what we're not going to have. Using our rainfall data from past, and it certainly tells you the years you've buggered up and the years you haven't.
What we actually thought was going to happen when we blade ploughed this country, while the tower was here, we blade ploughed around this, and then the wet season followed, and there's pasture, and then the next dry year, the dry spell, and then the next wet season. So it's had those 2 wet seasons, and this actually substantiated some to us to a point where we didn't expect. We thought we'd lose more carbon out of our soil when we ploughed it, but because of the way we done it with our plough and didn't make it too fine and got a seed bed acceptable enough. As you can see, the results pretty good as far as establishment goes, and we didn't lose that much carbon. And the amount of carbon we're putting down, it's actually surprised us a fair bit. Just the extent that this is working at this stage of the game.
Awesome. So yeah, thanks Peter and Matt for sharing your experience with Agrimix Flux. Now to bring it back, let's look at what all of this actually means for producers on the ground. So with Agrimix Flux, you can monitor your pasture improvements in near real time and see how they're performing and make better informed decisions. It also allows you to measure, model and verify your soil carbon so that you're ready for ACCUs under Schedule 2 or for insetting frameworks when they're developed with your supply chain partners. And importantly, you can calculate your whole of farm footprint, plugging your soil carbon number straight into emission calculators like MLA, Carbon Calculator, SBGAF or Ruminati, giving a complete picture of your greenhouse gas balance. So similar to what we did in that earlier case study at Ian McCamley's in Ralston. And then on the right, you can see an example of the type of report a producer will receive. It shows things like soil organic carbon, dry matter trends, management updates that they've given us, and key metrics such as above ground biomass insights and soil organic carbon insights. This is the kind of clear and actual information that we try to give producers to use and guide them through grazing management and carbon strategies. So in short, Agrimix Flux helps see what's happening now, plan ahead and verify your impact all in one place. So as we wrap up, if you're considering pasture improvement or just want to stay up to date with what we're doing, I would love for you to sign up for our updates. So simply scan the QR code on the slide here. It'll take you to our sign up page where you can stay connected with the latest from Agrimix Flux demonstration sites and real life case studies. And for those who sign up in the next few days, we'll be releasing a video and sending out a special video, I should say, from Ian and Lawson McCamley discussing the benefits of pasture legumes and the value of measuring performance on their farm. So it's a great way to keep on learning from producers who are already putting these practices into action. That's all from me and Chloe. So from us at Agrimix, thank you for putting up with us and letting us present our Agrimix Flux. Thanks, Julia.
Thank you, Zach, and great video there. Good to hear that just straight from the horse's mouth. This is your moment. If you're on the call and you'd like to ask a question, if you prefer to type it, I'll ask it for you. But if you've got something on your mind, you want to ask the speakers directly, just use the raise your hand function. So you'll see at the top bar above all of where all our faces are, there is a little raise hand, and we'll be able to give you permission to unmute and ask your question directly. I'm going to exercise my privilege as the person currently holding the microphone and ask the first question. So you had some fantastic results with Ian McCamley's farm in the start of your presentation there. Huge change from improved pasture. Was that just the inclusion of the Agrimix Pagades, or was there some other things that he was layering into the management at the same time to get that great result?
Yeah, good question, Julia. So Ian had pasture improved with Brigadis. He also added some improved grasses in there, such as Bambatsi and Penix. And he also did rip in 100 or 150 kilos of MAP per hectare in that paddock as well. So more than just a legume has gone into that. But it's fair to say that some of those fertilizer benefits were probably short-lived in those first 1 to 2 years. The big thing there is we're still 5 years on, getting the really decent live weight gains and soil carbon sequestration.
Yeah, that was really good to see. Greg's got a couple of questions, but one is, are you planning on doing any more research or modelling market exploration in areas of the country with less than 300 mil rainfall?
So our target has basically always been clay soils, so soils that have decent clay content, areas with 500 mil or more rainfall, and obviously red meat producers. That's what we've been focusing on currently at this stage, not at the moment, but that doesn't say we would never do it. They're the key principles that we've got in place. Obviously, that's where we think the carbon can be built quite quickly and easily, first of all. So let's tackle that and then look.
Got it. Kind of bit of two questions, another one of Greg's, but you've got, I guess, two customers you can be looking at. You've got people who are interested in the ACCU market and all that comes along with that, and then you've got all of those productivity-driven customers who are interested in using this to get some decision feedback on what they're doing on farm. Could you give an example, perhaps from someone you've worked with, where they've used that predictive tool and either that's guided them to continue doing something or stop doing something?
So we've used the scenario analysis to do feasibility studies for our 7 sites. Everyone's had a scenario done on it. These guys were always going in to do pasture improvement regardless. I guess what that has done is just reaffirmed that it's worth doing, especially if they're going to go down a soil carbon project line. In the productivity side, we did hear from Matt Quinn before, who mentioned that those insights that he can get and that scenario analysis that we can run will be really beneficial when they want to start looking at when they want to look at certain different management changes, or let's say we move into a drought. So looking at drought indicators on when to destock, keep ground cover, retain carbon, things like that. So yeah.
Got it. And then a brief one from Joe. Any of the turn sites in arid areas?
Well, I saw that Beryl Morris is on the call, so she might be able to answer that because I don't know.
Yep. So Beryl, and this goes for everybody, we're able to take you off mute. So just raise your hand if you do have something you want to ask or say, and we can do that for you. So you can ask your question. Beryl, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Can you just repeat the question? Something about flux sites in arid areas?
Yeah, so
Oh,
Beryl, Joe has asked if any of the turn sites are in arid areas, so less than 300 mil rainfall.
Absolutely, yes. We have arid sites in Western Queensland and in Northern Territory and South Australia. So we have good representation of aridity.
So Greg, there might be an opportunity for Agrimix and turn there.
Okay, any more questions? It could be about anything soil carbon. We've got two amazing people on the call. Nothing's a silly question. I know I have one or two more, but I do want to give people the opportunity. What sort of, maybe I'll ask a question, Chloe and Zach. What's sort of the mood at the moment that you're feeling from some of the customers you go out and talk to, some of your producers around getting involved in a soil carbon project? I'm sure there's a range of different voices. Where's kind of the mood at the moment?
Everybody is waiting for Iraq.
Some certainty.
Yeah. So Iraq, we understand, will hopefully hand down their recommendations to the Assistant Minister following their review of the soil carbon method, hopefully November, so a couple of months away. We have recommended to Iraq that they add Flux towers as a tool for verification of modelled estimates. So you can use measure model verified models like ours under Schedule 2, but at the moment the only way to verify the modelled estimates is with soil sampling. We've done a lot of work obviously with Flux towers and we think they're an excellent tool. So we've put that forward to Iraq and we're hoping that decision will come and that will help decrease costs further. So a little bit of suspended animation there. And like you said, I think people are looking for certainty, and having a tool like this that is accurate and can pick up quite small changes and quickly, could do it on an annual basis, we think will actually be quite a game changer. Hence all the, the importance of doing the research and publishing.
Yeah, you'll be looking forward to that date. Any more questions from the line? If you aren't sure how to use the raise hand, just feel free to type in your name in the chat and I'll come to the rescue. Louise had a question, but I think you might have covered it as we went along. So yes, Agrimix Flux is the whole package and process, and then Pagadi's is their proprietary legume seed,
which is now owned by Selected, but we're helping them sell it.
Brilliant.
Yeah. The other thing, Julie, I'd probably just add, in terms of the mood, everyone's really interested in productivity. So I think, the soil carbon is the nice cream on top of the cake. But if we can show producers how to increase their productivity, that's where people feel like they can take some control and manage their land. And as part of that, soil carbon comes with it.
Got it. Okay. Last call for our guests. Oh, we have a raised hand. Fantastic. Come off mute.
Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Zach. You mentioned briefly in your presentation insetting programs. So how would soil carbon feature within an insetting program?
That's what we're putting together, Jacob. So we are looking at how we can inset, obviously, soil carbon over through the supply chain and be credible. So that's what we're working up with MLA now, is basically what we're trying to do. So that is all in the think tank.
Yeah, we thought it might be Climate Active that would end up overseeing and insetting standard or framework. They've obviously been under review. So like Zach said, we're exploring, well, what is the supply chain looking for? So, what are the Coles and the Woolies and the McDonald's of the world looking for? And working with MLA on another project on that.
Question from Dan Swartz. For your 2050 model, where you sort of projected soil carbon flux and as well as the dry matter, not out that far, but the soil carbon, what climate data did you use to kind of sit under that to consider what might be going on in our wild weather out to 2050?
Yeah, good question, Dan. And some of the diehards out there will potentially criticise this, but we've basically taken the previous 25 years data and copy and pasted it forward. So we haven't allowed for climate change in that, so no heating or anything along that line, but we can allow for that in the model itself. So just because we haven't done it there doesn't mean we can't, and we definitely will be looking at that later.
And just as a bit of a side note, interestingly, there is a bit of research happening in the background that we started with University of Melbourne around the heat stress. Desmanthus and Progatus seems to be able to cope with heat stress better than other plants. So looking at how it does that and why it does that and whether that helps the animal.
Cool. And Louise, Elaine is very kindly jumped in and given us the acronym spell out, but why that's relevant is this committee reviews the integrity and standard of the methodologies that award carbon credits, and so and the whole methodology, how the whole methodology comes together. So Agrimix are waiting on some important news from them to really open up opportunities for producers if they're approved as a verification tool. All right, this is last call. I feel that if anyone does have any questions, you're more than welcome to email me and the sustainability team afterwards. I will absolutely chase up late questions. I don't mind doing that. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us again on Wednesday evening. This is the last of our September sprint of sustainability series webinars, but we will be running these throughout the next 12 months. So you'll see some new ones coming in November. As always, I'm open ears on topics you'd like to see, relevant to red meat, of course. But thank you for sharing your Wednesday with us, and have a good evening. Thank you to our speakers.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Scan the QR
Thanks,
code
Julia.
if you want to know more.